It is Texas Money and Business. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And good to have Doug Parker here, our great host for the show and Ambitious Radio Network. Doug, good to see you. Another great guest in store.
Yeah, Ron, thanks for keeping all the controls under control over there. This is Doug Parker, Ambitious Radio Network. It's episode number 12, so I guess that means we've been doing this for about 3 months now. And, today we're going to talk to Mary Amoedo, and Mary is an expert in business herself. And now, Ron, what's these new call letters we got? Was it KEXB?
You got it. You landed it. KEXB,
right.
Experts in Business.
Experts in Business. Okay, So that's us. So we're on 6:20 a.m. We've got a lot stronger signal, and especially in the evening time. So that's fantastic. Hopefully the listeners will appreciate that. We're going to talk about business, entrepreneurism. We're going to talk about finance, and interview interesting folks. And we've gotten some feedback on the show, and I always love getting that. We've got a new email address, dp@ambitiousradio.com. So DP, like Doug Parker, my initials. So if you've got some suggestions, someone you'd like to hear from, or maybe you just had a question for one of the guests, feel free to email that over to me. And today we're going to talk to Mary. So Mary Amoedo, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Fantastic. Well, Mary and I have known each other for a couple of years, and it's, just really interesting story that you've got. I know that you are with Ambit Energy, and you've won the Thompson Leadership Award. You're a top income earner for the company, and it's one of the fastest growing companies really ever in American history. So it's a fantastic story that you've got. But tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Well, that's kind of a loaded question, Doug.
It is.
My parents, we'll start there. I was born. I was the sixth of 7 children to immigrant parents.
Whoa.
I was born on an island as my parents were immigrating here from Vietnam. So I spent my first few days of my life in a little cardboard box on a big ship as they were immigrating. So crazy stories from that.
Really?
Spent most of my growing up years in Houston. Got out of there as quick as I could graduate and get out of town. And last 20 years I spent in Dallas. So
okay, fantastic. So your hair is a lot easier to do here in Dallas, I guess, than it is in Houston with all the humidity and such.
Yes.
Huh? I know that's my wife always talks about. Anytime we go anywhere that there's humidity, she does not like that. Now, I know that they asked you for some quotes and some different things. So you said that your life verse was Mark 5:16. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you come up with that?
I probably in my young 20s, I was introduced to personal growth and development and completely changed my life. I grew up very shy, very introverted, very self-conscious. I know people meet me today and they think there's no way. And it was really personal growth and development that kind of got me out of that shell, and years trying to figure out my mission statement. And then my mentor in Ambit, Brian McClure, he's our number 1 income earner, one of the top paid direct sellers in the world. He hosted a training seminar called Yellow Jacket Mentoring, and it was in that seminar that I finally nailed down a mission statement. My mission statement was to glorify God by being thoroughly used up for His purpose. And so when I read Mark 5:16, it just really resonated with me, which is, let your light so shine before men that they would see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So really, for me, it was just really doing whatever I can do to point people to the Father.
Well, that's fantastic. I've got a mentor of mine that always kind of talked about having a verse, and I've looked for one constantly, and I been through the Bible a couple times, and one of my favorite verses is Proverbs 13:20. He who walks with the wise will become wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And it just keeps sticking with me to be careful who you surround yourself by, to make sure that the fools, you don't get around them, because it's not that you'll be foolish, it's that they will harm you, or it will cause harm. And so I seek wise people. So thanks so much for your wisdom and sharing with me over the last couple of years and being part of the show today. I know you're involved in all kinds of stuff, but one of the things I saw was the women empowering women stuff that you do, and I know that's a special place on your heart. Last couple weeks ago, you did an event right here local in the DFW area, but how did you get involved in that?
Well, one of my mentors in Ambit Energy, Regina Gale, she's another top income earner. She actually created this organization over 30 years ago. She had had a career entrepreneur, lots of businesses she's been in, but she used to be a model in her young 20s.
Okay.
And she actually started training models and realized that most models, one of the things they really deal with is self-esteem. And that was a universal thing for women. And one of the things we say at Women Empowering Women is the most powerful thing that a woman can have is a great relationship with another woman.
Okay.
And so when we do these Women Empowering Women seminars, although they're almost all ambient energy related women, we don't talk about ambient energy. We don't talk about our titles, our pen levels, how much money we've made. We don't do any kind of recognition around that. It really is a woman empowering another woman. And we have all the women speak. I mean, some of the women, that is the greatest thing that they got out of the whole weekend is that they were able to speak in front of a group of women. And it's a really powerful time because I think one of the things women get is they start to see that we're all just human beings. And I actually get real transparent. I share, people look at me and they think, you know, Mary, she's got it all together. She's got this great business. She's financially free. Her and her husband get to work together. They've got 3 beautiful children and nothing goes wrong. I mean, from the outside looking in, it really does look like nothing goes wrong in my life. But that's just not the case. I mean, I'm human just like anybody else. You know, my blood bleeds red too. Yep. And I think once you kind of let your guard down in that seminar, I think what happens is it just really encourages women and it inspires them that they can go further, that there's more for them, that God's created more for them. And, you know, creating those relationships throughout the weekend makes all the difference in the world for women.
Sure. I'm sure it does. You know, that it's interesting. You talked about, you know, all the women getting together and sharing and such. You know, one thing I've noticed over the years is a lot of times you'll have a group, you know, maybe it's some kind of a breakout deal at church or whatever, and you'll have a group of women, but there might be 1 or 2 men in there. And if you're not careful, these men will just take over and dominate the conversation. I'm probably one of those guilty men of that. And you've got women that have these great ideas, but sometimes they'll just kind of sit back and not speak. So I'm sure in that environment, they really get, you know, a lot of opportunity to share and transparent, and that helps build up that self-esteem and you know, have conversations in other situations. So now, how often do you guys have events for that?
We do one in the Dallas area every year in the fall, and we do that at in Rockwall. And then we do one in the spring every year in Clear Lake in the Houston area. I think this year we're going to move that to Galveston. Okay. And then in the summertime, we always go to Lake George, New York, because it's just too darn cold outside of summertime.
Right.
But you can get more information at womenempoweringwomeninc.com. Okay. And all the details are there. There's contact information. So if anybody wants to find out more information about that, we'd love to have anybody. I mean, it's not a great thing about it is, especially people who've got friends not particularly involved with ambient energy, they start to see our culture. It's very different and unique than a lot of companies that they've been associated with. One thing that I've really loved about our company is you've got a lot of cross-line support. I mean, it really is about people helping people, and there's more than enough to go around. So there's not a scarcity mentality. It's really a giving environment. And so I think it's a real strong departure from what's out there in the world. You know, usually it's, you know, every man for himself. And
dog eat dog.
That's dog eat dog. I mean, especially in business, you know, it's unusual. It's not that common to have that kind of collaboration in business.
Okay. All right. Well, so we've got just a couple minutes left, you know, on this segment. Now, you mentioned that you were, you know, you're from Vietnam. You're born on an island, but what island was that?
Wake Island.
Well, now, where is that? I never even heard of it.
It's in the Northern Mariana Islands, which is about halfway between Asia and Hawaii. So
they were literally immigrating right then.
Oh, yes.
And they had, at that point, I guess, 5 other children with them.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. And then they had you've had a younger sister?
Yes.
Okay. So 7 of you guys.
It's a lot.
That is a lot. I couldn't imagine. I got 2. I could barely keep up with them.
I got 3. I can barely keep up with, so I get it.
My goodness gracious. And then, so I assume that y'all come straight to Houston?
No, we bounced around a whole lot of places. That's a litany of things. I learned a lot about just knowing my dad's history. You know, my dad was a high school principal in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, educators are highly revered. I mean, very well respected. He went back for a 40-year reunion this past summer. And they actually did parades and like the whole 9 yards, red carpet treatment, picking up in limousines, the whole thing. And when he came to America, he really didn't have any skills because he couldn't teach. And so he spent most of his first few years just doing manual labor, painting fences,
whatever it takes.
Whatever he could do to feed his 6 kids. And so, I just learned a great work ethic from my dad and really humility. That sometimes you're going to do what you don't want to do because that's what needs to be done. And so I never forget the humble beginnings I came from, so that no matter how much we produce, and you talk about all those awards and accolades and ambit. I mean, that's, to me, I'm just a girl from an immigrant family. I mean, that's who I am. And so I'm just looking at whatever opportunity I can do to help other people.
That's real interesting. We've got about 1 minute left here, and I'll make it quick. But I heard something the other day that says, the difference between doing your best and doing whatever it takes. And sometimes your best, frankly, it's not enough, and you have to do more somehow, some way. It sounds like it's what your dad did, and it instilled work ethic and humility in you. So that's fantastic. Great story there. Like us on Facebook, the Ambitious Radio Network. Anything that we talk about or go over, we're going to try to put it on the website, ambitiousradio.com. If you missed something, you can check it out there, or go to Facebook, the Ambitious Radio Network. Tune in after the break. We're going to be talking more to Mary about all kinds of things that she's done, some of the things that she's accomplished, what made her start her own company, and maybe some fears that she had and how she overcame those, right here on KEXB 620 AM, Experts in Business.
Back in on the show. It's so good to have you right here on Texas Money and Business, the Ambitious Radio Network, and Doug Parker here. Our sponsors, freeelectricitydfw.com, repairmycreditnow.com, and all3reports.com. All the number 3 reports with an S.com, and those are our great sponsors here on Texas Money and Business for Ambitious Radio Network. Mary, I had a question for you. You mentioned at the beginning of the conversation with Doug that you had some issues about insecurities and things like that. Go into detail about that, if you will. Someone like yourself, you're very successful now, but like myself, that kind of hits home with me, and maybe some other listeners that are joining us, because when someone can overcome something like that, it's really powerful. Go into detail about some of the insecurities that some of the the introspection and so forth that you may have when you were younger.
Being the number 6 child of 7 children with immigrant parents who struggled financially. I mean, there was a season where we lived in the projects in Mississippi. There was a season where my parents were on welfare. So there was always scraping to really stretch the dollar, always. I mean, it was just constant. And so I always fell to the background to not be a problem for my parents. I excelled in school. I did everything I could. So I always always had that time where I just didn't want to be one more problem for my parents to deal with. Yeah. And so I just picked that up. I mean, if I ever got into a big group of people, I would sit in the back and I'd be real quiet. I'd wait for somebody to talk to me. And it's kind of a long story, but long story short, I ended up getting married at a very young age. I got pregnant out of wedlock and married someone I never should have been with to begin with, only to find out he was a drug addict.
Oh, my.
And he was in and out of treatment a lot. And through Al-Anon, which is the family program for AA, I got introduced to personal growth. Somebody had introduced me to an organization called Landmark Education, started doing programs for them, and then I started to realize that who I was a combination of the things I made up about myself and the things that I let other people say about myself. So it was not a short process at all. Yeah. It was lots of seminars, lots of books, lots of really getting uncomfortable. But really, it was a burning desire in myself to be more than what I was. I got a glimpse of what was possible, and I wanted that. Right. And so I kept striving for that. And I, even today, as much as I've accomplished in my life and how far I've come, I know there's still more to go.
Wow.
I know that God's got so much more for me, and I've not arrived yet. And so I just encourage people. I always tell people, it doesn't matter where you are or where you start or what your circumstances are. I really do believe that you can have it all in life. God didn't create us to be mediocre. God didn't create us to survive life. He created us to thrive.
Yeah.
And so I just realized that there's so many people who are just trying to survive life. And as long as you have a glimmer of hope, and really it's just like what Doug said, is you've got people in your life that will encourage you to be more, you can be more.
Indeed.
And it's that environment that makes all the difference in the world.
Was it this program that you met Christ through this program or earlier?
I grew up Catholic, and I would tell people, and I'm not bagging on the Catholic faith, because I think my experience in Catholicism very different than other people's experience. But I was always a good Catholic girl. I went to Sunday school. I taught Sunday school. I taught catechism classes, but I never had a relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
I just knew Christ. I would tell people he was like my Facebook friend, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know him. I didn't meet him. I could see him. I knew what he was about, but I didn't have a relationship with him. And it was years ago, it was actually 11 years ago. I was pregnant with my almost 11-year-old daughter. And a good friend of mine started dating this man, and she was sharing about him, about how he was an evangelist. And I was like, that is so weird. And so we start meeting with him. His name is Mike Moore, a very prominent business guy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that I probably should introduce to Doug. But he started doing these Bible studies that my husband started going to. It was the first time my husband had met a businessman who was Christian in faith, in word and deed.
Oh.
So he never met anybody like that. And that's really where we came to know Christ.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Ron. Thanks for throwing it out there. That really gave us a great platform. When you were talking, Mary, just a minute ago, one of my favorite quotes that I've ran into over the years, over and over again, is "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And it's Eleanor Roosevelt. And that's one of those things where it's easier said than done. I definitely was an immigrant, but I'm from East Texas, never been to college, anything like that. And so I had my way of growing up, and there's a certain way that people treat you and look at things and different stuff. And it's, I just ran across that one and I thought, you know what, that's powerful. If you can really wrap your head around it and not let anybody make you feel a certain way, then it really makes a huge difference. It really does. And that was one of the questions, talk about, some of the fears you've had, how you've overcome those. At some point, you decided to start your own business. Now, I know you and Richard had a mortgage company and, had some ups and downs there. And our conversations with Richard, he's kind of that serial entrepreneur. He's always dreaming up something.
Yes, he is.
And he and I have been dreaming on a couple things just in the last few weeks. But what was it that really made you decide, hey, you know what, this direct sales thing, this multi-level marketing, this is intriguing to me. This is what I want to go do.
Well, I always loved the model because it made sense. I'm a former engineer, so numbers are my thing. Okay. And it really makes a lot of sense. It's low cost of entry,
low barrier of entry, yeah.
And so it's open to anybody. It doesn't discriminate from, skill level. And I just love that concept that anybody could do it. But I never found anything. We had always dabbled in direct sales before because it always intrigued me, but never really found anything that really worked. I mean, I was everything I had been involved in, because I'm such a hard worker, I always found some success very quickly. But when I got involved, one of the things that I started to realize was I could make it work, but I couldn't teach the average person to make it work. Okay. So a lot of things I was involved with was product-based, and nothing wrong with product-based companies, but the hardest thing was try to teach someone how to sell. And I just didn't have the skill myself to teach someone how to effectively do it. I could do it myself, but I couldn't teach it. And so, it was always in the back of our mind. And when I had left engineering, I as much as I loved what I did, I loved the work I did, I loved the challenge, worked for a great company, made incredible money, but the hours were absolute misery. I mean, going to work when it was dark and coming home when it was dark again, day after day, week after week, not seeing my daughter. And I thought, man, I did not bust my tail to get my engineering degree to have absolutely no life. And so that's when the mortgage business came about. My sister was in the business. Okay. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I thought I was going to go to medical school. And she said, listen, while you're trying to figure out what you want to do when you grow up, can you come help me? And it was during the refi boom. And I thought I can do this for a little while. And it was great. Had flexibility. I had a lot of time I could spend with my daughter. I made enough money where, I wasn't sacrificing quality of life. But the busier we got, the more successful we got, the less flexible it became. And so very quickly, we were working 60, 70-hour weeks. We were traveling all the time. We had offices in 4 states. And I hated the industry. And somebody came along and introduced us to Ambit. And at first, I said, absolutely no way. My plate is already full. It's overflowing. I'm trying to catch what's falling off. I cannot add one more thing. And they persisted. And my husband got us started. And when Richard signed up, I said, don't talk to me about meetings. Don't talk to me about people. I don't have bandwidth for that. You do what you want.
Right.
And I'm so glad he did, because once I started to see that it was producing results and I started to really look at it, I tore it apart, because I had already been involved with direct sales before, and I already found out that you couldn't do it. I mean, not everyone could do it. But when I started to research the company and I started to research the compensation plan, and I tore it apart, really looking for the gotchas, the ahas, the yeah buts. And I realized it's really brilliant. I mean, as an engineer, as a numbers girl, I saw that the compensation plan was really geared to paying people things that would actually proliferate growing the business, not just for the company, but for the individual. And so that's when we jumped on board full force.
Gotcha. Well, that makes perfect sense. And the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those kind of businesses. But what would you say, Mary, if you could go back to 10 years ago and tell the Mary today, tell the Mary from 10 years ago, hey, Mary, do this. There's one thing. What would that be?
It's probably something I still tell myself, but I've come a long way. But really, relax.
Okay.
It's relax. Take it one day at a time. You don't have to see the whole staircase before you take the next step. And I am very much a planner, very much I need to know and be in control of all the facets of whatever I'm involved in. And it really is just relax. Give it a moment. God's in control. You're not playing God today. He's already got that job squared away. And I would say in the last 10 years, that would have helped a lot. I mean, yeah. I've relaxed quite a bit. And financial freedom will help you relax quite a bit. I'll say that for sure.
No, absolutely. That makes a huge difference. And I ask that because it's some of the things that make you so great at what you do, in general, people, it also can be a real handicap. So being in control, handling your business, knowing to cross the T's, dot the I's, and do all that, to the extreme can become a real deficit, and it's really tough to overcome that. So we'll get into more after the break here. We've got just a couple seconds left, but we're going to go over some advice that you might give entrepreneurs and kind of how you've dealt with that. In the next segment, we're going to be talking a little bit more about entrepreneurship, Mary's experience with direct sales, multi-level marketing, and just really some of the details about, again, those kind of companies. Right after the break, right here on Texas Money and Business, KEXB, 620 AM.
It is about the money, just like the music says there. All right, we're back here on Texas Money and Business. I am Ron Taylor. Want to thank the sponsors with Ambitious Radio Network, freeelectricitydfw.com. Great people there. RepairMyCreditNow.com. Really great people there. Yes, and all3reports.com. That's all three, the number 3, reports with an S.com. Doug Parker, it's all yours.
Yes, sir. Well, Ron, thanks for, like I said, manning the ship over there and keeping us on target with everything. And today we've got a guest, Mary Amoedo with Ambit Energy, and Mary is really a very successful person in direct sales, or it's sometimes called multi-level marketing. But we're going to talk a little bit about those types of businesses, and really there are some out there that people have heard about, that some of them are good, they've heard about, some of them are not so good. But let's talk really, let's dig in deep and just really kind of uncover what are they really all about. So my first question is, how are direct sales and multi-level marketing, how are they different than a pyramid? Because when I hear pyramid, I think that's kind of a negative term.
Oh, it's definitely a negative term. A pyramid is actually a legal term. Okay. And it's really an unsophisticated Ponzi scheme. I mean, in a pyramid, it would be, I'm in, I get you in, Doug, and you're going to pay $500. I get $100, and the rest goes up line to whoever's above me. Okay. And then you get Ron in. Ron pays $500. You get $100. I get $100, and the rest goes up line. And then Ron gets somebody in, and so on and so forth. There's no goods or services exchange. It's just a money game. It's just a money tree that's coming in, and pyramids are illegal. So in companies like Ambit, companies like Mary Kay, which are very well known, especially here in the Dallas area, there are actual goods and services exchanged before money can be made.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes sense. And I think that answers my question there, because so many people, they think of these different types of companies. Now, MLM or multi-level marketing, direct sales, I think there's probably some other terms for it as well, but are there a difference between those terms? Or are those kind of interchangeable?
They're pretty interchangeable. I mean, multi-level marketing, I think a lot of people don't realize that there are a lot of businesses that are multi-level marketing. So there's a multi-level payout structure. So in a lot of insurance companies, especially when you're talking about securities, there is some type of multi-level structure because there's mentorship involved. Keller Williams has a multi-level structure in their real estate company, and a lot of people don't realize that. And so there's a lot of companies that really do have a multi-level structure, but a lot of people aren't tuned into that because that's not their area of expertise.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, and so now you said that the pyramids are illegal, but obviously Keller Williams, I mean, Ambit, lots of good stuff going on there. But how can you tell the difference between ones that are legal and illegal? I know you said something about their goods and services, but how can you tell?
A great litmus test is to see if they're part of the Direct Selling Association. So the Direct Selling Association is the kind of watchdog group for all multi-level direct sales companies. If they are a member of the Direct Sales Association, it means they've gone through a strenuous, it's either a 1 or 2 year vetting out process where the Direct Selling Association looks at their executives, they look at their bylaws, they look at their policies and procedures, their consultant or distributor agreements. They look at all of that to make sure it's legitimate. There's no impropriety in there. There's nothing in the gray area. So if that company is a member of the Direct Selling Association, you know that they've already gone and gone past the litmus test.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And one of the things that I've always liked about the direct sales or network marketing businesses is, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I love jumping off in the deep end without floaties, swimming with sharks. I mean, the scarier the better for me because that just means I got to work hard and survive. But not everybody else is like me. And so one of the great things about this direct sales type environment is that there are systems in place. You want to go do McDonald's and buy a franchise, it's $500,000. Okay. So the average person that, is working their 9 to 5, they're working 7 to 7, it's dark when they leave, as you said earlier, it's dark when they get home, and they're like, this is not what life's all about. I don't want to do this. I want to get out there and kind of do something different. But they can't go buy a franchise to McDonald's because they don't have $500,000 sitting around to do that with. So a lot of these direct sales companies, they've got systems that are in place. You can get the barrier of entry is relatively low in comparison to that type of a franchise. And there's still systems and there's folks that are around. You talked earlier, I think you said Crossline, but I've heard Upline before. So what's the difference between an Upline and a Crossline?
Well, the common terminology you're going to hear in direct sales is upline, downline, and crossline. And I'm going to really just relate that to a typical job. So your boss and your boss's boss and their boss, that's your upline. So anybody that you are accountable to, that would be whoever sponsored you, whoever sponsored them, the leadership above them. That's upline. Downline is anyone you have in your organization. So in business, if you're a manager, it would be your direct reports. So anybody who reports directly to you, anybody who reports directly to them, that would be your downline. Anybody underneath your leadership. And then crossline would be, just like in business, that would be your colleague that you don't report to, they don't report to you, but you work together. So that would be where you're not on the same team, so to speak, in the business. There's a lot of jargon in direct sales, and when you get involved in a direct selling company, you just know there's a lot of jargon. Right. And I think people who are experienced in direct sales really need to be keenly aware that most people are not familiar with direct selling jargon. I mean, there's a lot of jargon. I could throw out probably 15 acronyms and you won't know anything about any of them. But really, what I love about direct sales is just what you said, Doug. I mean, I'm way opposite of you. I'm an engineer, so I like things well calculated. I like to dot my I's and cross my T's before I jump in to the deep end. And
that's for somebody else to do, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm not swimming with sharks any day soon. But the thing that is great is, for us, when we started in Ambit, even if we had the kind of money to go buy a franchise, which at the time we didn't, we wouldn't have had the time. Right. There's no way we could have stopped doing what we were doing to go and start something new. What's great about network marketing, direct sales, multi-level marketing, whatever you want to call it, is that you have an opportunity to partner with someone who's already experienced and successful in the business who can help you leverage your time. I spend the vast majority of my time not working with people that I directly brought into the business, but people that are downline to me, sometimes 5, 6, 7 levels deep. It's 5 generations away from my personal person that I sponsored. And that's the reason why direct sales really works, is because you have that kind of structure where you don't have to necessarily know everything. You don't have to do all the work. You don't have to work with everybody. There are people who have a vested interest in your success.
Yeah, well, one of the things, it was real interesting, and I kind of got off on a tangent there, but when you talk about your upline, downline, crossline, all that, you were explaining, kind of in a normal or traditional business environment. One of the major differences is, and I've got multiple different businesses, but there's not employees in that environment. So while they're not your boss, if Mary's, upline or downline from somebody else, they're not your boss. They're just helpful people in the organization, and the people below you aren't your employees that you have to, pay FICA on and all this kind of stuff and worry about workman's comp or whatever the things are. There's an environment where it's a contractor type environment. So there's some loose business structure there, but it's not so structured like it would be if you owned your own business. You're having to make payroll every week and those kind of things. So that's another fantastic thing that I've seen as I've researched them over the years that a lot of people really like about it, because it's quasi-business, but it's not the traditional where you have to do all those same things. So that's a real good piece.
What I liken direct sales to is joining the gym. So you join a network marketing company, it's like buying a gym membership.
Okay.
You don't go, you don't do anything, you don't get any results.
Right.
But if all you do is 15 minutes a day, in a year, you're going to be in better shape.
Right.
But if you want to run and compete in a triathlon in 6 months, it's going to take you a lot more than 15 minutes a day. So your job is maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, getting a coach, adjusting what you do on your free time. Maybe you're listening to books instead of, watching TV. Just like if you were getting real serious about your health, instead of watching TV, maybe you're reading fitness magazines. Maybe you're watching interviews about people who've overcome major health issues. It's something that inspires you to keep going at the for the goal that you've got in front of you. And so I tell people, direct sales, your relationship with whoever's mentoring you in direct sales is a lot like your coach in the gym. Okay. So your coach in the gym can't do it for you, but they're there to help coach you, to encourage you, to teach you whatever you need to learn to help you with your technique and your style, but they can't do it for you. But if you don't show up and you don't ask for help, then you also don't get the benefits of having the coach. So in direct sales, I tell people, ask me what I do. Well, I train and develop leaders. That is really what I do. And it happens to look like direct sales in the energy industry with Ambit Energy, but the vast majority of my waking hours is spent developing future leaders.
Well, that ties very nicely into our next segment as we wrap up here. One of the things I was going to ask you, and you just went right into it, was, what advice you might give someone. And it's, hey, get engaged, put together a game plan. And, if you're spending 15 minutes, this is what you're going to get out of it. If you spend, an hour or two. I may ask you in the next segment about, selecting them. So there's so many different options out there. I mean, obviously, I know you've got a bend towards Ambit, obviously. But we'll look at some different, things that are out there and how people can make those decisions right after the break. So with that being said, as we come into the next segment, Mary's going to talk about some just interesting stories from business, maybe folks that she's investing in, people that are investing in her, just creative, interesting stuff about Miss Mary Amoedo with Ambit Energy right here on KEXB 620 AM and the Ambitious Radio Network.
Back in on the show here at Texas Money and Business. My name is Ron Taylor. It's good to have you right here. I want to thank our sponsors for Ambitious Radio Network and Doug Parker, freeelectricitydfw.com, repairmycreditnow.com. Great people over there. All3creditreports.com. That's all three, the number 3, reports with an S.com, and that's great sponsors here. Mary, it's good to have you here on the show today. And you were talking a little bit about the structure of the MLM and exactly what you do. I've always wondered, and as I've sort of gotten my feet wet, I haven't gotten really dove into the pool yet. But it's interesting because, I begin to think about people that do very well in this, is there a plateau? Do you ever hit a level of plateau, or is the sky truly the limit in something like this? Give us a little bit of an idea of how it's like, if you will, at the top.
I would say that the sky really is the limit, and you can plateau. You have to decide what level of success you want to have. So quite honestly, I'll tell one on myself. For the last few years, we have hit a plateau and we have coasted. We have been so blessed that for the last 7 years, my husband and I, we've been able to live off of residual income where we literally do not have to work for our money in order to pay all of our bills. And really part of the driver that kind of allowed us to, or had us plateau and allowed us to plateau was our oldest daughter, who actually goes to school with Doug's daughter at Dallas Baptist. She was graduating soon. And I know for me, when I graduated from high school and I left my parents' house, I never came home. After that, I finished college, I got married, and I was gone. And I knew that was a strong possibility for our daughter. And the time that we had left with her in our home was limited. So we relished that time and we didn't build our business, and our income stayed steady. Fortunately, because of the way Ambit Energy pays out, our income was steady during that time. And since then, now that she's in college and we've got a big fat tuition bill, and we've got really strong desires to give huge amounts of money to the kingdom. I mean, I know God's called me to be able to write 5, 6, and 7-figure checks, and I can't do that unless I have the money. I remember being with John Maxwell, and I was fortunate enough to get some one-on-one coaching with him, and asking him about how he transitioned from ministry into leadership development and in the business world. And he shared with me, and he said, listen, you can't give it unless you have it. And so I just remembered that. And so now we're at that place where I'm looking at getting those 6 and 7-figure checks so that we can start giving that kind of money. So I really don't think that there's a plateau, not in our business. It might possibly be a cap in other businesses. It all depends on how the compensation plan is structured. And I am not an expert in every compensation plan. I'm definitely an expert in our compensation plan. And for sure in our compensation plan, the sky really is the limit.
That's fantastic. Doug?
Yeah, talking about the sky being the limit, and I don't know what, all the details, but I know our top income earner, it's ridiculous the kind of money that gets made. It's something like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
Ouch. Wow,
okay,
that's phenomenal.
So it's crazy. But
well, let me tell you a funny story about Brian.
Yeah.
Brian said to us, he said, I found this $10,000 check in my pocket that someone had written me 2 months prior. And he said, I just wept because never in my life have I been able to find $10,000 and it not make a difference for me. And at the same time, I was really convicted that I've got to be a good steward of the money that God's placed in my hands. And that's just moving, for $10,000. I mean, I certainly would remember a $10,000 check, but to have that happen for you, that's crazy money.
Wow,
so
wow.
Yeah, I've seen that. The sky is the limit for.
Yeah, that is crazy. That's good stuff. Now, I know that you've done some mentoring with Brian. Are there other people that are you're following or that's mentoring you? I know you threw out there a couple names earlier in the show, but is there anybody specific, books that you like or something that you're reading right now?
I read a lot of John Maxwell. He just, his who he is really resonates with me. He definitely is someone who wants to lead people to God, lead people to Christ, but he doesn't do it in a way that is turns people off. I mean, he really is about leadership development. I'm really about leadership development. He's got a great organization called Equip, where they equip leaders all across the world, just really teaching them rock solid biblical values to lead. And I love his heart. I love his style. There are books that I just pour into of his. The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, it looks like it's been through a freaking war zone because it's dog-eared and highlighted and Post-it notes everywhere. It's just, and I've recommended that book a ton of times. I'm a pretty voracious reader, and I've got some women in my church that I look up to. Chris Parker, who's been a business coach, who leads my women's mastermind group. It's a bunch of business women that get together and share business ideas. An elder in my church, Darlene Unkelbach. She has taught me so much about my faith, about being a mom, about leading in business, how to balance that all. I mean, my pastor.
I love Darlene. She's wonderful. I know Scott and Darlene personally. They're just wonderful people.
They are. They're really good people. I'm actually meeting Darlene this week.
Yeah.
But my pastors, Keith and Sheila Kraft, just how I've loved watching them. You know, one thing I have done well in my life, and this is probably in the latter years of my life, was really being intentional with my relationships. Yeah. I have been very intentional with who I bring close and very intentional with who I push far. Mm-hmm. And, you know, John Maxwell had, in one of his books, talked about time was just like money. You're either spending it or you're investing it. Mm-hmm. And so every time I'm with somebody, I look and see, is this a spending or is this an investment of time?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, it really resonated with me, and it's never left me.
Cool. Well, so let's get off the not so serious. Blah, blah, blah. Let's just go something that's kind of goofy here. So, what's your favorite movie?
Oh, Doug. Okay. So I tell people, if you start a question with, have you seen the movie, 99.9% of the time, the answer is going to be no.
Uh-oh.
So I am not a movie girl.
Okay.
I certainly love feel-good movies and, stupid movies from my young years, Something About Mary, because that's my name, right? But I love movies that inspire you. Okay. I loved Facing the Giants. I loved that scene where he has the guy on his back and he crawls. And I think that's us. If you've not seen that movie, watch that scene where he's crawling across the football field. And I think that's each one of us. We don't know what we're made of until somebody says you can keep going, you can keep going. And if you don't know, you don't see the limit, the sky, right, being the limit. If you don't see the ceiling, you're just going to go straight for the sky.
Just keep pushing.
Yeah.
Keep pushing. That's it. So what about recharging? What do you do to recharge?
It's funny, in my mastermind group, Chris Parker had us look and see what's an area of our life that's a little out of balance. Mm-hmm. And the area in my life that's out of balance is Selah, which is just your downtime, your recharge time. And I started to realize that there's a lot of things that I can do for Selah that I am rushing through. So like earlier I said, what I would say to myself 10 years ago is just relax a little bit. Is one thing I do love to do is I love to read. And I love to sit in the corner of my office in my rocking chair that I rocked my 19-year-old in and just sit and be still for a bit. And then another thing that I really do love doing, and it's crazy because I'm very much a people person, is I love to go shopping by myself.
Okay.
That is like recharge time for me.
Yeah, well, retail therapy.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not a big shopper, but sometimes I just like to take my time and not have people pulling at me.
Right.
And I love long dinners over a great meal with great conversation. I love that. I mean, if you want to give me a great gift for my birthday, don't give me a gift. Take me out to dinner. Let's have great conversation, and we'll call that the gift.
There's something about breaking bread.
Yes.
Love that.
There really is. That is fantastic. It really is. Well, Mary, I really appreciate you so much, being on the show and getting to hear, more about you and some of the things that you're doing, the direct sales world, but really just your story. I mean, it really is an amazing story, literally coming over, you said in a cardboard box. I mean, that's not every day you get to meet somebody and then they come and just make it happen. So that really is the American dream. So that's fantastic. I just love hearing that. Now, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, they wanted to talk to you about your business or saving on energy or whatever, how would they do that?
They can come find us on our Ambit website, which is ambitdna.com. They can also find me on my personal website, which is thenewplana.com.
Okay.
Because Ambit was Plan B, now it's the new Plan A.
All right.
And I'd love to hear from anybody. And one last thing I want to just say, really to the ladies specifically, or anybody who's got a special woman in their life. I think a lot of times, especially in business, we get a lot of pressure to perform in a lot of things. And you feel like you're pulled in every which direction and you feel like you have to excel in all of them. You just can't. And I just want to give you permission to not have to do it all the time. Because there's some seasons in my life where I'm not doing any kind of business. I am focused solely on my kids. It's all about my kids, and that's all I've got time for. And then there's seasons where I'm solely focused on my relationship with God, and that's all I've got time for. And so just know you have permission to not have to do it all the time.
That's great. That really is great. Well, we're going to wrap up here real quick. Credit, expert tip of the week. Somebody asked me the other day, they really wanted to know some information. Had to do with the co-signing. We've kind of run out of time. I'll get some more detail on the next show. But basically, when it comes to co-signing, don't do it. That's the bottom line. If you want any more details, send me an email, dp@ambitiousradio.com. I definitely want to thank our sponsors once again. Ambitious Radio could not do it without you. Free electricity, DFW.com, all3reports.com. That's all the number 3 reports with an S.com, and repairmycreditnow.com. Tune in Wednesdays on Texas Money and Business from 10 to 11 right here on 620 AM KEXB, the Ambitious Radio Network. Next week, we're going to be visiting with Johnny Quinn. Johnny is a motivational speaker, former NFL player, and United States Olympian. He was in the Olympics last go-around. Remember, you can make money or you can make excuses, but you cannot make both. Get out there and be ambitious.